Gather around, friends. Have you ever wondered about the secrets hiding in the shadows of your favorite film? Did you know that the most famous scene in The Godfather Part 2, the final chilling whisper, was almost left out completely? It's true. That moment of silent betrayal almost stayed locked in the script, a secret never shared with the world. Hello and welcome. I am so glad you're here. Tonight, we are going on a journey behind the camera. We are pulling back the curtain on a masterpiece. This isn't just a story about the Corleone family. It is a story about the family of dreamers, fighters, and artists who brought them to life. They faced storms, both real and make-believe. They turned accidents into magic, and they created something that would live forever. So get comfortable. Imagine we're sitting by a warm fire, and I'm about to share some incredible secrets. Let us dive in and discover 20 weird and amazing facts about The Godfather Part 2. Number 20. The search for a young Vito's soul. Finding the actor to play the young Vito Corleone was one of the biggest challenges. Director Francis Ford Coppola knew he needed someone special. This actor had to show us the kindness, the intelligence, and the quiet strength of the man who would become a Don. He had to have old eyes in a young face. Coppola looked at hundreds of actors. Nothing felt right. Then he remembered an old photograph. It was a picture from the 1950s of a little boy with a serious, thoughtful look. But that boy was now a grown man. That man was Robert De Niro. Coppola found De Niro and offered him the role. But the work had just begun. De Niro knew he had to become Vito, not just act like him. He moved to Sicily for months. He walked the streets where Vito would have walked. He listened to the language and the music. Most amazingly, he learned to speak only the Sicilian dialect for the entire role. He did not want to speak English and then have someone else dub his voice. He wanted it to be real. Every word you hear from young Vito is Robert De Niro's own voice, speaking a language he worked tirelessly to learn. He won the Academy Award for his performance. Think about that journey. A little boy in an old photograph grew up to win an Oscar for playing the man he looked like as a child. Life can be stranger and more wonderful than the movies. Number 19. The heartbreaking silence between brothers. The scene where Michael says, "I know it was you, Fredo. You broke my heart," is one of the most powerful moments in film history. The pain feels so real because in many ways, it was real. John Cazale, the actor who played Fredo, was a gentle, kind, and beloved man in real life. Al Pacino, who played Michael, was his very close friend. They loved each other like brothers. This made filming the scene incredibly difficult. To create the feeling of a deep, painful betrayal, the two actors decided to do something extreme. For several days before they filmed the scene, they did not speak to each other at all. They avoided each other on set. They did not laugh or share meals. They created a real wall of silence between them. So, when the cameras finally rolled, the distance and the hurt were not acting. They were true feelings. When Fredo looks confused and scared, that is John Cazale feeling the loss of his friend Al. When Michael's voice is cold as ice, that is Al Pacino protecting a heart that actually cared. They used their real-life friendship to show the destruction of a fictional one. It was a brave and painful gift to the movie. That wasn't just acting, it was real heartbreak. Number 18. Building a winter wonderland in a hot city studio. Michael Corleone's beautiful, cold, and lonely. Lake Tahoe compound is a major part of the movie. It looks like a snowy fortress high in the mountains. But did you know almost none of it was filmed in Lake Tahoe? The movie studio refused to pay for the crew to travel there and film on location. They said it was too expensive. So the production designer, Dean Tavoularis, and his team had to get very creative. They built the entire Lake Tahoe house, the living room, the dining room, the boathouse inside a giant empty soundstage in New York City. They brought in truckloads of real pine trees. They covered the floors with tons of white salt, which looks just like real snow on camera, but doesn't it melt under the hot lights? They painted a huge, beautiful backdrop of snowy mountains and a frozen lake. So when you see Michael staring out the window at the quiet, icy landscape, he is actually looking at a gigantic painting. The fire in the fireplace was real, but the world outside was a magnificent fake. Even the scene where Fredo goes ice fishing was filmed inside on a small pool of water with fake ice. This fake world perfectly matched Michael S. life. Beautiful on the outside, but completely manufactured and empty on the inside. What looked like a peaceful winter retreat was a masterpiece of illusion. Number 17. The Real Baby on Ellis Island. The opening scenes of young Vito Corleone arriving in America are touching. We see him as a little boy, alone and scared, coming through Ellis Island. Later, we see his mother holding his baby sister, pleading for their lives. In that scene, the actress playing the mother was holding a baby. But this was no doll or actor. This was her own real child. The filmmakers did not plan this. The actress simply felt more comfortable and natural holding her own baby during such an emotional scene. No one stopped her. During the take, the baby, feeling the tension in its mother's arms, began to get fussy. You can see the mother gently bouncing and soothing the child, whispering to it calmly. That tiny, real moment of a mother's love was captured on film forever. It adds a layer of true, raw emotion to the scene. This family's journey to America was about hope for their children. And in that moment, a real mother was hoping for her own child as comfort. Life and art came together in a beautiful, unscripted whisper. Number 16. A real street party for a fake murder. The Feast of San Gennaro sequence in Old New York is bursting with life. We see streets packed with people, food, music, and dancing. Young Vito walks through this celebration before he confronts the bully, Don Fanucci. To create this feeling of a real, living neighborhood, director Francis Ford Coppola did something brilliant. He didn't just hire hundreds of actors. He closed down a real New York City street in the Little Italy neighborhood and threw an actual huge block party. They invited everyone who lived there. They set up long tables and cooked real Italian food, pasta, sausages, pastries. They hired real musicians to play. The extras weren't acting, they were truly celebrating, eating and dancing with their families and neighbors. Robert De Niro as Vito simply walked through this genuine party. The joy you see is real joy. The laughter is real laughter. This made the scene feel incredibly authentic. Then into this real celebration, the movie inserts its fictional story of vengeance. The contrast is powerful. Life is happening all around, but Vito's path is leading him toward a dark act. The chaos wasn't staged, it was captured. The crew didn't create a festival, they joined one. Number 15. The nervous shakes that made a villain. Lee Strasberg was a legend, but not as an actor. He was the most famous acting teacher in America. He taught people like Al Pacino and Marlon Brando. The Godfather Part 2 was his very first major movie role, and he was terrified. He played Hyman Roth, a soft-spoken but incredibly dangerous gangster. On his first day of filming, Strasberg was so nervous that his hands would not stop shaking. He was embarrassed. He thought it made him look weak and amateur. He tried to hide his hands, but the shaking continued. Director Francis Ford Coppola saw this and immediately stopped him. But not because it was bad. Coppola loved it. He told Strasberg, "No, Lee, keep the shakes. It's perfect. It shows that Roth is an old man, but his mind is sharp and deadly. The shakes make him more real, more vulnerable, and therefore more scary." Strasberg listened. From that moment on, the slight tremor in Hyman Roth's hands became a key part of the character. It wasn't a mistake. It was a stroke of luck. A real moment of fear from a first-time actor created one of cinema's most quietly terrifying villains. The weakness became his strength. Number 14. The Mystery of the Final Whisper. The ending of The Godfather. Part 2 is unforgettable. Michael sits alone, a king in his empty castle. His sister Connie comes to him. She leans in and whispers something in his ear. We never hear what she says. This mystery has haunted fans for decades. What was the secret? Here's the weirdest part. Even the movie didn't know. The script did not say what the whisper should be. Director Francis Ford. Coppola never decided. On the day of filming, he told actress Talia Shire, Connie, to simply whisper anything that felt right to her in the moment. She chose to whisper, "I forgive you." They filmed that, but Coppola, unsure, also filmed a version where she said nothing at all, just kissed his cheek. In the editing room, they had to choose. The silent kiss felt too soft. The spoken line felt too clear. They finally chose the whisper, but they lowered the sound so we could not hear the words. This was genius. By not telling us, the movie makes us part of the story. We lean in, just like Michael. We try to read his face. Is it a message of forgiveness, or is it another betrayal? The power is in what we don't know. The most important line in the film is the one we have to imagine for ourselves. Number 13. Fredo's tourist hat. In the bright sunny scenes in Havana, Cuba, Fredo Corleone stands out, and not in a good way. He wears a cheap, silly-looking straw hat with a colorful band. This hat wasn't in the costume design notes. It was the idea of John Cazale, the actor playing Fredo. Cazale thought deeply about his character. Fredo was a man who always wanted to fit in, to be seen as important and stylish, but he never got it right. Cazale imagined that Fredo, on his fancy vacation to Cuba, would go buy what he thought was a sharp, local hat. But he would pick the tackiest, most touristy hat in the shop. The hat tells a whole story without a single word. It shows Fredo's desperation, his poor taste, and his eternal status as an outsider trying too hard. Later, in the tragic scene on the boat when Fredo is killed, he is not wearing the hat. He has lost that silly symbol of his failed attempt to belong. A simple piece of clothing, an actor's choice, gave us a window into a character's lonely soul. Number 12. A private moment to create public tears. The emotional scene where Fredo breaks down in front of Michael is heartbreaking. Fredo sobs, "I am your older brother, Mike, and I was stepped over." Getting to that level of real tears is very hard for an actor. John Cazale did many takes, but the deep gut-wrenching cry he wanted wouldn't come. He grew frustrated and upset with himself. He felt he was failing the scene. Seeing his friend S struggle, Al Pacino did something wonderful. He asked the director to stop filming for a moment. Pacino then walked over to Cazale, put his hands on his shoulders, and spoke to him quietly, privately, just between the two of them. No one else heard what he said. It was a moment of true friendship and reassurance. Whatever Pacino said, it worked. When the cameras rolled again, Cazale's tears flowed freely and powerfully. The performance you see is Fredo pain, but it is also John Cazale's gratitude and love for his friend Al, who helped him find that pain. The bond between the actors made the brotherhood on screen feel tragically real. Number 11. The Silent Piano Genius. At the big party in Lake Tahoe, young boy sits at a grand piano and plays a complex, beautiful classical piece. The guests are impressed. Young Anthony Corleone listens in awe. The music is flawless, but here is the secret. The piano was completely broken and silent. The actor, a boy named Chris Grimes, was not a piano prodigy. He had learned the finger movements for the piece, but the piano on set could not make a sound. The beautiful music was added later in a recording studio. So, during filming, the boy had to pretend to play a difficult song perfectly, moving his fingers with precision and emotion in a totally silent room filled with watching actors. He had to look like a genius without any of the sound that makes the genius. His performance was a perfect act of pantomime. What you hear is the skill of a musician. What you see is the skill of a young actor creating magic out of silence. Number 10. The star who became the director. Francis Ford Coppola pushed himself to the absolute limit while making this film. The stress and the long hours made him very, very sick. He developed pneumonia and was so weak he could not get out of bed. The production had to keep moving. Every day cost a fortune. So, who stepped in to direct? It wasn't another hired director. For a few critical days, the star of the film, Al Pacino, took over. He directed the scenes he wasn't in. He guided the other actors. He worked with the cinematographer to set up shots. He made creative decisions to keep the film on track until Coppola could return. This is almost unheard of in major Hollywood films. It shows the incredible trust and family feeling among the cast and crew. They weren't just employees. They were protectors of a shared dream. A star became a director to save the family business. Number 9. The kitchen table food fight. The scenes in young Vito's New York apartment feel wonderfully lived in and real. One of the best is the family eating around the kitchen table. To capture the chaotic, warm feeling of a real family meal with young children, Francis Ford Coppola told the actors to just be a family. He told them to talk over each other, to laugh, to play. To break the ice, he suggested they play with the food. What started as a bit of fun turned into a real, playful food fight with the bread rolls on the table. The child actors giggled and threw bits of bread. Robert De Niro as Vito laughed a real warm laugh as he watched his movie family act like a real one. That natural, joyful chaos you see is not scripted. It is a captured moment of genuine happiness. It shows the life and love that Vito is fighting to protect and build. The family's future was built on moments as simple and perfect as a bread fight at the dinner table. Number 8. The Lost Story of Tom Hagen. Robert Duvall. Tom Hagen, the quiet, loyal consigliere, has a mysterious sadness about him. There was almost a reason for that sadness that we never got to see. An early version of the script included a powerful scene for Tom. In it, he would travel to a small town to meet his biological family, the family he was taken from as a child. The scene showed him sitting with them, realizing he did not belong there either. He was an outsider in the Corleone family, and now he was an outsider in his original family. It was a scene about a man forever caught between two worlds. The scene was filmed, but during the long, difficult editing process, it was cut. The movie was already very long, and the scene, while beautiful, was seen as a side story that slowed down the main plot. So, a key piece of Tom Hagen's heart, an explanation for his quiet loyalty and deep loneliness, was left on the cutting room floor. His character remains compelling, but with a secret, lost chapter. Number 7. The Real Mayor S. Real disgust. The character of Senator Pat Geary is slimy and horrible. He insults Michael Corleone to his face, calling his offer spaghetti money and calling Michael a pimp. The actor who played him brought a shocking level of real disgust to the role. Why? Because he wasn't really an actor. He was John V. Lindsay, the actual former mayor of New York City. Coppola wanted a politician who looked and sounded real, so he hired a real one. Lindsay was not pretending to look down on a gangster. In many ways, he was a powerful, entitled man looking down on a criminal. His performance isn't polished acting. It is the raw, natural arrogance of a lifetime politician. When he sneers his lines, the contempt feels genuine because for Lindsay, it likely was. He wasn't playing a senator. He was being one. Number 6. The click of a broken machine. In the tense meeting between Michael and Senator Geary in the Senator S. office, there is the constant, annoying click of a typewriter in the background. The sound makes the scene feel more real, more bureaucratic, and more irritating. But the typewriter on the desk was just a prop. It was completely broken. The actor playing Geary's aide had to sit there and pretend to type, pressing keys that did nothing and did not move the paper. He had to look busy and efficient while using a useless machine. All the while, Al Pacino and John Marley, Geary, were having their intense, quiet conversation about corruption. The clicking sound was added later by a sound effects artist. The power struggle in the room was so strong that no one needed a real typewriter. The fake clicks were just the soundtrack to a fake negotiation. Number 5. The walkie-talkie that caused real screams. The scene where Kay tells Michael she lost their baby is devastating. Diane Keaton as Kay has to release years of trapped anger, sadness, and betrayal in one explosive confession. It is a huge acting challenge. During one of her most powerful takes, just as Keaton was reaching a peak of emotion, a loud, crackling static noise erupted on the set. A crew member's walkie-talkie had accidentally been left on. The rude electronic sound completely destroyed the mood and ruined the EEO take. Keaton was furious not just as Kay, but as Diane. That real, fresh anger was still burning in her when they started the next take. She channeled that frustration into her performance. The result is even more raw, more shocking, and more real. Sometimes a technical mistake can give an actor the gift of genuine emotion. The interruption helped create a perfect scene. Number 4. The fork that told a story. Robert De Niro's preparation for young Vito was incredibly detailed. He noticed that many older Italian immigrants had specific manners. One small detail was how they held their fork. Many kept their fork in their left hand after cutting their food, a common European style, instead of switching it to their right hand, like most Americans do. De Niro decided to use this. It was a tiny thing, but it showed Vito's old-world habits. During one meal scene, De Niro accidentally forgot. He cut his food and then switched the fork to his right hand to eat. Director Francis Ford Coppola immediately yelled, "Cut!" He ran over and said, "Vito would never eat like that. He's from Sicily." They did the scene again. For De Niro and Coppola, even the smallest movement had to tell the truth about who this man was and where he came from. Authenticity was in the details, right down to the grip on a fork. Number 3. The Ghost in the Streets. Here is a fun secret for fans who watch very closely. In the first Godfather film, Vito's oldest friend is a man named Genco Abondando. Genco is the one who dies in his bed while Vito visits him. The actor who played Genco was Frank Severo. In The Godfather Part 2, which shows Vito's early life, Frank Severo appears again. But he is not playing Genco. He plays a different young man walking through the streets of Little Italy. It is a hidden cameo, a little wink from the filmmakers. It's as if the spirit of Vito's friend is still there in the neighborhood, watching his story begin. It's a small thread that connects the two films in a playful, ghostly way. The past is not just in the story, it's in the faces on the street. Number 2. The blanks that were too blindingly loud. The moment when young Vito climbs onto the roof to shoot Don Fanucci is a classic. The gun he uses is a real old-fashioned revolver. Of course, they could not use real bullets. They used special blanks cartridges that make a bang and a flash without firing a real projectile. But there was a problem. The blanks they first used were made for outdoor scenes. They were incredibly, painfully loud. Inside the narrow, brick-lined New York street set, the sound of the gunshot was explosive. It was so loud it hurt the crew's ears and even scared people in nearby buildings. They had to re-engineer the blanks with a different kind of powder to make them quieter, while still creating a convincing flash and bang for the camera. Even a controlled movie moment can have very real, very loud consequences. The shot heard around the neighborhood was almost too real. Number 1. The photograph of a man who became a legend. The final shot of the film is haunting. Michael Corleone, alone in the darkness, thinking of a lost family and a lost self. They filmed this on the very last day of production. The mood on set was heavy. After years of work, the journey was ending. When Francis Ford Coppola finally said, "Cut for the very last time," something unusual happened. No one cheered, no one clapped. There was no celebration. A deep, respectful silence fell over the entire soundstage. The crew and cast just stood quietly, understanding they had been part of something special. In that stillness, a photographer took a picture. The photo is of Al Pacino, still sitting in the chair, in his Michael Corleone suit, with the same lonely, thoughtful look on his face. The actor and the character were one, frozen in a moment of perfect, sad art. That photo captured more than an actor finishing a job. It captured the end of a monumental journey into the heart of a dark character. What looked like an ending was the birth of an immortal image. Bonus fact, the music that almost disappeared. Now, for one last secret, a story about the soul of the film itself, the music. The beautiful, sad, and famous Godfather Waltz was composed by Nino Rota for the first film. When it was time for Part 2, the studio executives didn't want it. They said the music was old news. They wanted a brand new score, something different to make the sequel feel fresh and separate. But Francis Ford Coppola fought with all his might. He argued that the music was the memory of the Corleone family. It was the sound of Vito S. Hope, of Michael S. Wedding, of Sicily. To use new music would break the emotional connection between the two films. He begged and pleaded. Finally, the studio agreed to let him keep some of Rhoda S. themes. This was the right choice. When we hear that familiar melody during young Vito S. scenes, it ties him directly to the legend his son would both inherit and destroy. The music is the ghost of the past, haunting the present. It tells us that Michael S. cold, silent world was built on the foundation of his father S. warm, musical one. One small, fierce choice to fight for an old tune preserved the aching heart of the entire saga. Old tools created a new, deeper kind of magic. So, what is the true story of The Godfather Part 5? Looking at these secrets, we see at SS more than a movie about crime. It is a story about building a life. It is about the dream of safety for your family. It is about the terrible cost of getting that safety through violence and betrayal. It shows how a kind boy full of hope can become a man sitting alone in the dark with everything and nothing. These 20 stories show us that a masterpiece isn't born perfect. It is made through struggle. It is made by people who care deeply about a fork, a hat, a silent piano, a real tear. It is made by a family of artists who fought for their vision, just as the Corleones fought for their empire. They built a world so real we can feel its warmth and its chill. They turned accidents into art and feelings into forever. These whispers from behind the camera are the real treasure. They remind us that great art is human. It is messy, emotional, and alive. If these stories lit a spark of curiosity in you, please subscribe. There are so many more films hiding their own amazing secrets in the shadows. Every movie has a truth, and we'll keep uncovering them one story, one secret, one shared moment at a time. Thank you for listening, friends. Until next time.